Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our session. We are super excited to be here at Twilio Signal. Here today, we're going to talk about unlocking new revenue and really focusing on the use case of omni-channel payments within omni-channel comms. And so a few products we'll talk about: Stripe Terminal, Twilio Pay, and then we're going to lead out with an actual customer live demo of the product. So quick introductions. I'm Chris Triganos, and I focus on developer advocacy at Stripe. And joining me today is Simon and Kevin, the CTO and the lead engineer at Inbox Health, that are using some of the products that we're going to be showing you today. We have a lot to cover in the next 30 minutes, and our hope is that you'll walk away with an understanding on how companies like Inbox Health, billing providers, customer support, platforms can save hundreds of thousands of dollars in development time, reduce their customer service load, and most importantly, improve customer satisfaction. And so I know today there's been a lot of talk about cross-channel conversations. Omni-channel comms, omni-channel payments are terms you hear a lot. And the main consensus is that it's really complicated, a lot more than people think, right? And so when you break down what does omni-channel actually mean, at the end of the day, it's to provide a great experience for your customers, but also have a single view of your customers' interactions with your different places of purchase and product. And so I think with both Stripe and Twilio, we are focusing on that conversation use case. And let's dive in. So first we'll talk about Stripe, the Stripe payment platform, and then we'll talk about Stripe Terminal, which recently launched. We came out of GA a few months ago. And then we'll talk about Twilio Pay, and then we'll have a live demo from Inbox Health. So quick show of hands, how many of you have used the Stripe API before? All right, how many of you have heard of Stripe before? Awesome. Okay, so at our core, our mission is to increase the GDP of the internet. But practically speaking, we provide software to accept payments and manage your business online for startups, nonprofits, large enterprises. Some quick stats. We launched 8 years ago, back in 2011. We're currently processing hundreds of billions of dollars for millions of companies. A stat on the developer relations team I love is last year alone, we released 3,200 core API updates. And on any given day, the stat's a little higher now, but on any given day, we handle about 200 million API requests, which at its peak is about 10,000 API requests per second. Now, Stripe is always in the context of the products that you know and love. And so that stat I want to focus on, 84% of Americans bought at least one item from a Stripe user last year. And so even if you're not familiar with Stripe, chances are you use Stripe multiple times this week. And that's one of the most important and gratifying things about being able to work at Stripe is that we're working with some of the fastest growing technologies, but we're also working with some of the most ambitious developers in the world, many of you here today. And so kind of at the core of Stripe's payment platform is the idea that we have our core infrastructure, which we refer to as our global payments and treasury network. This allows us to build a suite of core payment APIs, everything from being able to authorize payments, also provide payouts, capturing payments in multiple forms, which, omni-channel payments is why we're here today, issuing, being able to create chargeable cards for companies to programmatically control their spend limits. So you have all these APIs that sit on top of our treasury network. And on top of that is these APIs our applications that allow you to reduce your risk, reduce your tolerance for risk, so fraud detection, being able to expand internationally. We have built native integrations for recurring subscriptions right within the Stripe products themselves. And a product we'll talk about in a little bit, Twilio Pay, is another application we partnered with Twilio built themselves that works with us as a payment gateway. But today we're here, I feel like a car salesman holding this thing up. We're here to talk about Stripe Terminal. And so this is a developer-first approach. It's everything you need to accept in-person payments at scale. And so for omni-channel payments, especially, next slide, sorry. If you are an online-first company, if you're an internet-based company, bridging into accepting in-person payments is difficult. Regulation is completely different than how you're running your website processing for payments. Your go-to-market plan, it really depends on how you've purchased your hardware. Is it certified, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I think one factor, especially for product-first companies, internet-based companies, is that the end user experience of your customer. You've spent all this time wireframing and doing user flows for your customers online. Very often when you go to, say, a pop-up shop or your business is releasing a bunch of retail stores, you want that in-person payment experience to be representative of your brand. And so these are a lot of hurdles. I was blown away. I spent some time leading up to this talk. I was spending time with some of our larger customers and some startups that are going to market with our terminal product. Building your own point-of-sale stack can take up to 2 years. And so the factors you don't think about when creating a point-of-sale system, first off, where's the place of truth? You're creating customer objects when you're purchasing things online. When a customer buys things in person, very often these are different systems, different inventory systems. Not to mention getting this hardware certified, PCI compliant for in-person use. There's all these factors you don't think about just to get out the door with your first units. And so at the top of this workshop, we said, omni-channel payments is really complicated. And so that's why we built Stripe Terminal. Primarily to focus on this omni-channel experience where if a customer purchases something in person or online, in the end, it's the same customer object in your Stripe dashboard. So Stripe Terminal isn't just the hardware. We have several different hardware readers we support. But what it is its core, it's actually a suite of APIs, several mobile and web-based SDKs, and then the readers themselves have the Stripe SDK on their kernel, being able to connect directly to your backend. And for those of you that are, for the show of hands that are already Stripe customers, if you go into your dashboard, right, so dashboard.stripe.com, and look in the left navigation, Terminal and the ability to test them out, to try out the simulator, to actually control fleet of devices is available for every customer, and it's live today. And so really this is a developer-first approach to building Terminal. So what we have here is, the screen's over there. We have our Verifone 4000. So this supports every use case. What's interesting about the Verifone 4000 is it supports tap, swipe, chip, Apple Pay, Google Pay, but the Stripe JavaScript SDK actually lives directly on the device. And so when you're making purchases, it's going straight into your backend to your existing Stripe stack as if it was another online purchase. The BBS chipper is more of an NFC swipe device, but it does have chip swipe and NFC ability. But the way you control the integration is you're telling the Stripe terminal the object, the quantity, what currencies you accept. You're actually setting the display, like what the display has on the terminal itself, and then you're creating a payment to actually process online, all from the existing code stack you have. And so we built this as a fully programmable point-of-sale system. So it has built-in hardware and software updates. It deals with the local acquirers in the specific locale and region you're in. It's going to deal for everything with these are pre-certified. We're working directly all the way down to the questionnaire you often have to fill out for your PCI auditors. Our Stripe is actually filling that out for you, and you see the details in your dashboard. So we're taking away a lot of the complexity that you just want to support on in-person payments. And so when you pull this together, transactions are creating customer entities, payments, devices. These are all different unique objects in your Stripe dashboard. And it's a single point of view for your customer. And that's really why, we love it. We want Stripe to be the place you go to see all transaction activity. But then you get into details. Let's say you're a internet-first eyeglass company and you want to start having in-person shops. You can order thousands of Stripe terminals and you can programmatically control what the displays are in each one of those locations. In addition, the staff, one thing a lot of internet-first businesses don't think about is, so you get this in the mail and you're one of the retail locations, your staff needs to be able to easily pair this And you need to be able to control this just from one place for device fleet management. And so all that's just in Stripe dashboard today. And so some quick use cases, and then I'll kind of close on Twilio Pay and we'll do a live demo. So maintaining a single view of customers, we've talked about this. So a very common use case is let's say I want to buy some eyeglasses. I see some products I like. I have a large head. I need to see this in person. So I go to the in-person store. I already have an account with them from past purchases. I pick up a few glasses, go home, realize, like always, they don't fit. And so I need to return them. And so when I initiate a return through the website, that actually is, I'm the same customer. There's not like a customer service rep that has to look in a separate system to see where I purchased it. It's just considered I am the same customer that bought that in person, the card's in file, I'm good to go to initiate that experience. Another use case, especially as a developer, I'm excited about and our team's excited about, is the ability to initiate in-person recurring payments with Stripe billing. This also works with Twilio Pay, which we'll show. So one use case is, I need to start going to the gym, I try out the trial, I'm ready to start paying for the monthly subscription. Very often, if you've noticed, if you've signed up for gyms before, they make you go over to another computer and you're really logging into their website to create an account. With Stripe Terminal, you just swipe as you would any other payment. That's going to tokenize the payment method, and then recurring billing happens ongoing. You can go online to cancel it at any time, but it's really a seamless experience. And with Twilio Pay, a very similar use case, you can just call up 24/7, provide payment details to an automated teller over the phone, and that's going to become another customer object with recurring payment on file in Stripe. And so I'm super excited about Twilio Pay. It makes accepting payments over the phone extremely easy, especially for developers who are trying to be PCI compliant and they want to make sure their customers have comfort when providing the most sensitive data to businesses. And so a lot of the use case here, Twilio built Twilio Pay. It supports multiple gateways, not just Stripe. The use case is when you're giving payment over the phone, there's a big risk when you're talking with an operator. This use case, and we'll have a demo in a moment, is the ability when you're on the phone to be able to drop into an IVR experience, provide your payment method over the phone, and then Twilio works directly with Stripe to tokenize that payment amount and create the customer object directly within Stripe. It's really awesome to see Twilio removing this complexity that many of our shared customers face. And so two kind of main factors, I would strongly encourage you to go to Twilio's docs and try out Pay yourself. They have a really good getting started guide. I think within 10 minutes, I created a Twilio Pay operator. It was test data where I would purchase things with fake cards, and it was a very, very seamless experience, especially with my existing Twilio applications. And so how many of you have used Twiml or Twilio's programming? Great, okay. So it's just another one of their core verbs. So pay is kind of two main factors, the ability to capture your customer's payment to use for a later time, or the ability to charge right on the phone a certain amount if they're an existing customer. And the other part, which we'll dive into in a minute, is the Pay connector itself. And the Pay connector allows you to tokenize a card for future payment use, or also to create payments over the phone. And so what you're seeing here is Pay itself is an application, which we talked about the payment stack earlier. Pay is an application that has a direct relationship with Stripe, or they actually support several payment gateways, where when a customer interacts with an existing Twilio application, you can bake Twilio Pay functionality directly into the app you've already built, the stack you've already built. That's going to go into Stripe, and that can be recurring payment, that can be one time, and in the healthcare use case, we'll talk about actually practical ways that you can use this. And so from our point of view, we're trying to build the commerce infrastructure of the internet, and Twilio has already proven they are the communications platform of the internet. And so we're very excited about developers using both products to build great experiences. And so now I'll stop talking and we'll actually get into a real use case with a customer, a shared customer of Twilio and Stripe that's actually providing real value to their customers in the healthcare industry. Please give a big round of applause for Simon and Kevin.
Thanks for that, Chris. And thanks for the warm welcome, everyone. I'm Simon Kaluza. I'm one of the co-founders and the CTO of Inbox Health. I'm joined today on stage by Kevin Yuliwan, our lead engineer for our Twilio and Stripe projects. To give you guys some background, we started Inbox Health to improve the way that healthcare providers bill their patients. We wanted to create great digital experiences for consumers as they manage the often frustrating, complex, and confusing process of paying for their medical care. Twilio and Stripe have been great partners for us at Inbox Health as they both help our providers transact and communicate with our patients. Most of us have probably experienced the tremendous frustration that comes with dealing with the healthcare industry's billing processes as they exist today. When we get a bill from our provider, we're confused about what we owe and why we owe it, and it's really difficult to ask questions, even if the bill is sometimes inaccurate. That comes from both a practical standpoint and an emotional standpoint. Compounding that, almost all medical bills that are sent in the US today are only sent on paper. And the ones that are sent digitally frequently have terrible user experiences that were made in the late 90s due to EHR meaningful use implementations that really don't work anymore. And the payment options are painfully limited as well. You almost always have to send a check back in the mail system, or maybe scribble your credit card down, even worse, and pray that it gets there on time before the bill winds up in collections. The majority of consumers even admit that they would even change healthcare providers entirely over this issue just to get a better payment and billing experience. Inbox Health is solving these problems by creating a completely different kind of patient billing and communication platform that's designed specifically for today's consumer. And with the help of Twilio and Stripe, we're scaling it across hundreds of US healthcare practices. Our core technology is a series of billing algorithms that decides how, when, and what to send to a patient to get the best experience for both them and the healthcare provider. We leverage data on millions of patients to understand how they would like to engage, when it's best to reach them, and how we can tailor that message content to really make them understand their bill. Every patient is unique, and it's important that the billing process reflects that uniqueness. Certain types of communication will work better for others, and that's why we send paper bills, but we also send SMS, email, and voice calls based on their preferences and prior history. Twilio plays a key role in enabling many of these functions for us and makes it easy to manage these communications, even if there's 10,000 of them going simultaneously for a relatively small billing team. Many of our patients, when we reach them via email or SMS, view and pay their bills in our interactive web-based portal. They can click into each charge and get more detailed information about what they owe and why they owe it. The portal and presentation is not only more intuitive and easier to understand, but also gives access to the patients to allow them to engage in real time with their billing experts and sometimes even their medical providers themselves. A big focus for us was on simplifying that payment process. And Stripe has been a particularly important partner for us in making a more intuitive and streamlined payment experience, not only for the actual real-time processing capabilities, but in onboarding new clients through Stripe Connect. Traditional merchant processors make this extremely painful, and regulation and KYC that is only done via paper and long, arduous processes can be done quickly through Stripe by the use of their API and webhooks. Now, these digital experiences are great for many patients, but in healthcare, the demographics do skew a little bit older, and it's important to support these legacy use cases as well. And payments over the phone in particular was a pain point when Inbox Health first started its product. We could only allow patients to really call into our call center and pay via a customer service rep by reading their credit card aloud and having it entered manually. This is obviously less than ideal for many security reasons, but it's also impractical and costs a lot of money, as you have to staff that call center, and then you can only take payments during that time frame. So obviously, a payment IVR was definitely required for Inbox Health. We first looked at some of the off-the-shelf payment IVR solutions that are fully compliant, but those are extremely static. You've probably encountered these payment IVRs when you're paying your utility bills. They aren't very customizable, and then the merchant account process for them is even worse than other payment processors and will always be a separate database similar to what Chris talked about earlier. Unifying these and integrating these is actually a great pain point for a lot of existing healthcare billing entities and wasn't something we were going to participate in. So we looked at rolling out our own PCI-compliant IVR solution, and we're extremely daunted by the task. Though it is possible for a small startup to do this, we would have burnt ourselves out immensely, and we would have undone all of the limited PCI exposure that we gained through Stripe, and we would have had to reverse and reinvent the wheel that Twilio has done so well with all the telephony systems, and then maintain these systems on top of that. It would have come at a great expense. Luckily, right when we were looking at these options, Twilio Pay was announced, and we got to beta it with our partnership with both Twilio and Stripe. Now with Twilio Pay, we can actually reuse all of our existing Twilio connections via webhooks and make all these payments through REST API calls and the same TWIML verbs that we know and love from the rest of our platform and experience. Perhaps best of all of these Stripe webhooks that are in place also come into the same endpoints as if they were Stripe transactions natively through the Pay connector. Next, you'll get to hear a snippet of what Twilio Pay generates for us and what it sounds like on our IVR system itself. And all of this is done in real time through TWIML, as we discussed, and leverages Amazon Poly's speech engine, which Twilio has a native integration with. After it's done, I'll pass it off to Kevin to dive into some of the technical details.
Thank you for calling Inbox Health's phone payment system. To begin, please enter the account number of the patient account you're calling about, then press pound. The account number you entered was 203. Your patient account has a balance of $300. To make a full payment, press 1. To make a partial payment, press 2. Please enter your credit, debit, or HSA card number. Please enter your expiration date, 2 digits for the month, and 2 digits for the year. Please enter your security code. It's the 3 digits located on the back of your card. Thank you. Please wait while we process your payment. Thank you for waiting. Your payment of $300 was successful, and your payment confirmation number is 0910. Your current balance is $0. You may stay on the line to hear this information again, or hang up at any time.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Kevin Yuliwan. I'm a software engineer at Inbox Health and the lead developer of the IVR you just heard, and the one who put in Ferre Jacques in the demo. I'll be giving a quick high-level technical overview of our IVR system and showing you how integral of a part Twilio Pay and Stripe really played in bringing that to life. And then I'll finish with some nice developer upsides if you do decide to develop with Twilio Pay. So first, I'll set some context for you. As many of you may already know, most IVR systems, including ours, are workflow engines, and that means every step represents an action to be taken based on your current state and some inputs. And so to implement that, we have API endpoints, which generate TWIML. And that TWIML is, of course, composed of TWIML verbs such as gather, say, and as we've been talking about, pay. So a simple example is here on the right. When a patient calls into our payments phone number, which is registered with Twilio, Twilio sends a request to our first endpoint gather account number, which, no surprise here, gathers their account number. It then takes that input and sends it as a parameter to the next endpoint process account number, and the call flow continues from there. It's all very similar to how an HTML form works, but since this is over the phone, obviously you can only process one input at a time, and we can see that here. So this is a rough overview of the 5 main steps in our payment IVR. In reality, we also gather their date of birth after we get their account number, and we use that to validate their identity, and that's of course important since we're going to be posting a payment to it. Once we have those 2 inputs, we have a third endpoint to process that and verify that they match. If they don't, we send them back to the gather DOB, give them an error message, and ask them to try again. Otherwise, if they do match, then we can proceed to the next step. So steps 2 and 3 go hand in hand. Now that they're validated, their account is validated, we can say their account balance and then proceed to gather their payment option, either 1 for a full payment or 2 for a partial payment, similar to what you heard in the demo. And then of course we have another endpoint to process that choice, and we branch off depending on what they chose. If it was a full payment, then we can set their payment amount to their account balance and continue. But if it was a partial payment, we then need to redirect to another endpoint to gather that payment amount, verify that, and make sure that that amount makes sense. Either way, we end up with some payment amount, and then we can finally begin creating a payment with it in the next step. But before I move on to that, I'm sure you've already been able to tell each endpoint so far has been very singular and explicit. And in fact, I'm also glossing over a few additional in-between endpoints that do things like verify with the user their previous input, some specific error handling, and redirecting to customer support, and so on. But really, that's the nature of any stepwise IVR system where you can only gather and process one input at a time. Which is why, in the next step, we can really see the full strength of Twilio Pay. We simply have one single endpoint, and we just call that pay verb, and we send that to Twilio. Twilio gets that, and they begin the whole card collecting process. They handle collecting all the card information, the number, expiration date, CVC. They handle error checking and retry logic. They handle validation, and of course, finally, they handle sending all that information to Stripe in a PCI compliant way. At the end of the day, they handle everything that has to do with card information collection, and you can only imagine how many more endpoints we would have needed, how many more gathers and processes we would have needed if it weren't for Twilio Pay doing all the heavy lifting for us, and so that was a really big win. And at the end of the day, any IVR call flow involves some complexity, but with Twilio Pay and Stripe, nearly 50% of it is handled out of the box. And in fact, if all you need to do is take card information for a payment, then you can likely handle the entire call flow just using Twilio Pay and Stripe. In other words, for a small startup like us, Twilio Pay and Stripe are the reason we can build such a valuable and complex feature in an efficient and compliant manner. They're the reason why we can offer and start taking payments over the phone and really offer that all-important omni-channel payments experience that Chris was talking about earlier. And so if all that didn't convince you engineers yet, I'll finish up with some Twilio Pay upsides as a result of using Twilio Pay and Stripe. First, since we use Stripe as our payment processing connector, we can reuse our existing Stripe payment processing logic. Essentially, the same code that our web app uses, our IVR system uses as well. Helps keep our code nice and dry. And because of that, we also receive all existing Stripe webhooks, no additional configuration needed, and it all just works. And finally, Twilio Pay offers complete customization, and we were really able to tailor our over-the-phone payments experience to fit in line with our company brand, and do things like use custom card information prompts to mention HSA cards. We used Twilio seamless integration with Amazon Poly to use a more realistic and, in my opinion, friendlier sounding robot voice, which you heard in the demo. It's important you want to sound as friendly as possible, right as you're about to take someone's money. And finally, it's just offering complete customization of the voice, currency, accepted card types, little things like timeout handling, error handling, and it's all just completely very flexible and adaptable to any use case. And so that about finishes it up for me. Before I hand it back off to Simon, I'll leave you guys with one more bonus dev tip, and that's if you use internationalization and localization, and you pass a language into the Twilio Pay prompts, you can then instantly begin collecting payments in multiple languages, perhaps even languages you don't even normally support. And as a business like ours, where offering a better and improving the payment experience is a core message of our business, it's a pretty nifty feature. So thanks again, everyone. And Simon, back to you.
Great, just a couple more points to finish up. Thanks for that overview, Kevin. The partnership impact of Stripe. Obviously, Stripe Connect in particular is really what empowers this to work. It lets any practice that's onboarding instantly get access to a Twilio IVR upfront really easily. And with that too, we can receive omni-channel payments. And what does that mean for Inbox Health? Well, it means that no matter where they process that payment, whether it's in the office using Stripe Terminal, or it's at home using Stripe.js, or over the phone via Twilio Pay, it's going to the same REST API, the same Ruby on Rails backend, and we can tokenize and share customers across all of these with one single database. With the partnership impact of Twilio, we were able to reduce the number of calls that we received by 800 in the first month alone of the Twilio partnership and the Twilio Pay beta. And then when it comes to calls that actually received the payment, over 61% of them were actually taken without any customer service interaction at all. And that happened 24/7, anytime, which is a great improvement over our legacy system. Specifically with Stripe and Twilio Pay, we estimate we saved about $250,000 of initial development costs. In reality, by submitting to more PCI audits and who knows what other types of administration tasks needed that really a huge company has trouble dealing with, but a startup definitely would. We saved a huge bunch there. And with only 1 month between the first time that we tested out a Stripe Pay, or a Twilio Pay, excuse me, a Twilio Pay webhook, and then to when we processed our first payment was only 1 month. So that's truly some remarkable shortness there when you think about the 12 months it might take to engineer a full system. Thank you to Stripe and Twilio for letting us partner with them on this in beta. We're very excited to continue our relationship going forward as we push into production. And if you guys have any questions about how we use Stripe, how we use Twilio Pay, or Twilio at large, feel free to come up and ask us after the presentation. Thank you.